Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about a part of ancient history that a lot of people don't know much about: Etruscan warfare. Now some people think the Etruscans, who lived in central Italy from around the 8th to the 3rd century BCE, were just party lovers who weren't very good at fighting. But that's not really true. Most of what we know about them comes from the Romans, who eventually took over. And let's be honest, the Romans weren't too keen on giving credit to the people they defeated. So the Etruscans ended up looking weaker in the history books than they really were. If we look more closely, the Etruscans actually knew how to protect themselves. Even though they didn't leave behind many written records, archaeologists have discovered a lot through the ruins of their cities, weapons, armor, and art that shows scenes of battle. One thing is clear: they cared about defending their cities. They built strong walls and used bronze weapons and armor. But there was a problem. They didn't really team up as one big group. Each city kind of did its own thing, and that made it easier for the Romans to take them down one at a time. Etruscan soldiers weren't full-time warriors. Most of them were regular people, like farmers, who picked up weapons when their city needed help. They fought to defend their land, gain more territory, or take control of trade routes. At first, they had to buy their own gear. But starting around the 5th century BCE, they began using coins to pay full-time soldiers, or hire help from other places. Their armor was usually made of bronze and included chest plates, helmets, shin guards, called greaves, and round shields. They looked a lot like Greek soldiers, known as hoplites. Some Etruscans might have worn tough leather armor instead of bronze. It was lighter and easier to move in, but it didn't survive over time like bronze did. Their main weapons were bronze spears and double-edged swords. In one carving from a town called Vitellonia, there's a warrior holding a double axe, but that was probably more for showing power than actual fighting. A lot of what we know comes from their tombs. Places like Cerveteri, Tarquinia, Veii, and Vitellonia have given us many examples of helmets and weapons. But not everything found was used in real battles. Some helmets, like one from Veii with a giant bronze crest, were likely made for ceremonies, not war. The real battle helmets were simpler and bowl-shaped, perfect for seeing better and moving fast in a fight. Those fancy Corinthian helmets with narrow eye slits? Not common among the Etruscans. They needed better visibility for their quick style of fighting. And what about horses and chariots? Well, their tombs have horse gear and even two-wheeled chariots buried with the dead. But no one knows for sure if these were used in real battles or just buried for spiritual reasons. Maybe they were signs of wealth, or maybe they were supposed to help the dead in the afterlife. It's still a mystery. Figuring out exactly how Etruscan armies fought isn't easy. Roman writers weren't very fair, and a lot of their art was influenced by other cultures. But it looks like the Etruscans might have used a Greek-style fighting method called the phalanx, a group of soldiers moving together in a tight line with spears and shields. This worked well for quick one-time battles, especially when cities were fighting each other. But as battles got more unpredictable, the Etruscans probably changed their style. Their helmets got simpler, and their shields got smaller, which shows they were moving toward faster, more flexible combat. Their cities weren't unprotected either. Many had strong walls. These didn't always surround the whole city, but they were built where the city was most at risk. The parts without walls were usually protected by cliffs or deep ditches. Cities like Cerveteri, Tarquinia, Veii, and Volsi still have parts of these walls today. They were made from mud bricks on stone bases or from large blocks of volcanic rock called tufa. Some even had strong gates and towers. These walls weren't just for looks. They gave people from both the city and nearby areas a safe place to go during attacks. And these defenses really worked. The city of Veii held off Roman attacks for 10 years, from 406 to 396 BCE. That doesn't sound like a weak civilization at all. But fighting on land wasn't their only strength. These people also knew how to handle themselves at sea. Now, it's a little harder to get clear info about Etruscan naval warfare, because there aren't many records, and most of what we know comes from Greek or Roman sources. Still, we do know that the Etruscans had a lot of wood from forests, so building big ships wasn't a problem. These ships used sails to travel, and oars to move quickly in battle. They could smash into enemy ships and then let soldiers climb aboard to fight. The sea was super important to the Etruscan economy. You can see this in their art, which shows lots of ships, and in tombs where small models of boats have been found. The stuff found in their graves, like foreign goods, shows that they traded a lot across the Mediterranean. Greek and Roman writers often called them Tyrrhenian pirates, but that was probably just jealousy. The Etruscans had control over important sea routes, and others didn't like that. There's even a Greek myth about Etruscan sailors. In the story, they kidnapped the god Dionysus, who escaped by turning them into dolphins. Wild story, sure, but it shows that people saw the Etruscans as serious seafarers. At their peak, they held land in places like Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, and even parts of France and Spain. They were a big deal at sea, even standing up to Carthage. But things changed after they lost to Syracuse at the Battle of Cumae in 474 BCE. That marked the end of their strong presence on the water. Back on land, the Etruscans were facing big problems. Their armies were mostly part-time soldiers, locals who fought for their cities or clans. That setup couldn't compete with Rome's professional army, which had more people, better training, and smarter tactics. Another big problem: the Etruscan cities didn't work together well. Sure, there were moments of teamwork, like when Cerveteri and Carthage teamed up to defeat a Greek fleet in 540 BCE. But those moments were rare. When Syracuse attacked their coastal cities in the early 4th century BCE, most cities didn't help each other, and they lost control of major trade routes. At the same time, they were getting hit from the north too. Celtic tribes began invading around the 5th century BCE, and eventually beat the Etruscans at the Battle of Melpum near modern-day Milan in 396 BCE. So now they were getting squeezed from both the north and south. The Etruscans also had a habit of fighting among themselves. Tomb paintings, like those in the Francois tomb at Vulci, show local wars. Some cities, like Aquarasa, were abandoned and taken over by nearby towns, likely because of these fights. Even with Rome getting closer, the Etruscans couldn't turn their religious group, the Etruscan League, into a proper defense team. But Rome didn't take over right away. In the late 6th century BCE, King Lars Porsena of Cusi actually invaded Rome. And even later, the Etruscans didn't give up easily. There were long years of war, city attacks, and brutal back and forth. In 356 BCE, Tarquinia killed 307 Roman prisoners. Rome struck back by killing 358 Tarquinians. The Etruscans tried to fight back by joining with the Samnites, Umbrians, and Gauls. But after losing the Battle of Sentinum in 295 BCE, the tide turned. Cities like Cusi and Perugia were attacked soon after. Then in 283 BCE, Rome won again at Lake Vadimo, crushing more resistance. Between 281 and 280 BCE, the Etruscans lost key cities like Tarquinia, Orvieto, and Vulci. Rome set up colonies for its soldiers and turned the once great Etruscan cities into smaller Roman towns. One of the last cities to fall was Cerveteri in 273 BCE. Its land was taken and handed out. Through strong planning, steady battles, and smart deals, Rome took control of all of Italy. That was the start of their big rise. Even after losing their freedom, the Etruscans kept getting pulled into Roman fights. In 225 BCE, they helped Rome fight the Gauls. During Hannibal's invasion in the Second Punic War, they stayed loyal to Rome. But later, many northern Etruscan towns backed the wrong side in Rome's civil war. When Sulla won in the early 1st century BCE, he got revenge. Cities like Cusi, Populonia, and Vitellonia were destroyed in 83 and 82 BCE. That was the end. The Etruscans didn't just lose their battles, they lost their identity, becoming part of the Roman world.